everyone. Welcome. I'm going to pull up my screen here for you. You should be able to see this. So I'm excited to be with all of you today, and I appreciate the introductions with a little bit of background information that helps me. We have a small group today, so I want to keep this as engaging and personal as possible. So feel free to, type any questions you might have. Feel free to interrupt me. So I'm not bothered by that at all. So I'm going to be focusing today on social emotional development, really beginning at birth, just to give kind of that foundation to social emotional development. But the skills that I'm going to be talking about and the practices are really going to be geared towards kids ages 2 to 5. So when they're really starting to engage and interact with peers and talking more and using those social skills, of typical development. The information I'm presenting is applicable for all kids. I am going to gear it specifically for kids with autism. So I'll get into some specific strategies, emphasizing the needs that kids with autism need at that age level for the types of skills that they're developing socially. A lot of this information has been adopted from the National Center for Pyramid Model Innovations, acronym NCPMI. I am going to have some QR codes in the presentation for all of you to access their website and resources. So it's a great center with a wealth of information around social emotional competence, development, and skills for young children. So these are our objectives today. Like I mentioned, we're going to kind of dive into what is social emotional development for young kids, kind of understand it, lay that foundation. And then I'm going to go into those evidence-based practices and skills that we want to teach our kids with specific information for kids with autism. So to get us started, I'm going to start. Sorry, my slides are clicking on one screen, not the other. You guys are probably like, where are the objectives? Here we go. Okay, so I'm going to start with the developing brain and kind of go into the definition of what is social development, social emotional development, and how does it really happen? So this definition has been adopted from 0 to 3. The term social emotional development refers to the developing capacity of the child from birth through 5 to really form close and secure adult and peer relationships, experience, regulate, and express emotions in socially and culturally appropriate ways, and to explore the environment and learn really all in that context of family, community, and culture. So it's a big definition with lots of different parts. I'm going to kind of break it down for you guys just briefly for just some general better understanding. So when we talk about that developing capacity, as you guys probably know, kids are changing really fast from the moment they're born, as they continue to grow. And so social emotional development really occurs over time based on experiences and relationships. I kind of think about it as it's ever evolving. So, even as us adults, we can probably speak to us still learning social skills. So it's just one of those that there's no finite end to it. It keeps going, and we develop the capacity for it as we continue to grow. Forming those close and secure adult and peer relationships is really that attachment and those nurturing relationships that adult caregivers provide for their young children in a healthy manner. So when adults are loving and responsive and really consistent in their care, that just builds that foundation for their kids to develop socially. The third part, that forming the capacity to experience, regulate, and express emotions in culturally appropriate ways, really involves that wide range of emotions, thinking about the child individually in the context of their own family and what that might look like. and how they may experience those emotions. And then finally, considering where these families are, what kind of environments they're in, their cultural background as a family unit, all that plays a factor in how they develop their social emotional development. So real quick, just to kind of get us going today, I'd like you guys to just take a minute to quickly brainstorm, think about your own social emotional skills and strengths. And then I want you to think about the social emotional skills that really help children be like school ready. And when I say school ready, it's like going to kindergarten. So it's that 5-6 age range. So, you know, we're thinking about those first 5 years, laying that foundation for them to be ready to go into school. So if you just want to jot these down on a piece of paper or keep them in your head, I'll give you guys a minute. And then if you each want to kind of share one skill or strength, that would be great. And then we'll move on to some additional information. And if anyone wants to just unmute and say out loud, you are welcome to go whenever. I wish I could have, I don't see my chat box. Would anyone like to volunteer? Rhonda, I'm not able to see the chat box, or does anyone writing in there? Because that's appropriate too. For some reason, I can't see it on my end.
No, there isn't any comments yet.
Okay. Okay. And we can always keep these to ourselves. We're going to go through some additional information and kind of come back to these. So we're going to talk a little bit about why this is so important. Why focus on social emotional development at such a young age, beginning at birth. As I mentioned, the first, 3 years of life are really, really critical in building those brain connections. The brain is just kind of like spitfiring, connecting and wiring everything that's going on in a baby's brain, and it happens really fast. Those early relationships help children experience so much and really feel that safe and security that they need. And those experiences really allow for new brain connections to form. And then those connections are modified through verbal and physical interactions. So, we talked about that developing brain really needing a consistent and secure environment. And so as we talk a little bit more about kids with autism, this is key for every kid. So what works for one works for all, which is, I think, social emotional development does a nice job of. I'm going to explain this in the context of all children. We're going to watch a brief video here just to kind of give us a little bit more information on that brain power. And so I'm going to go ahead and get this started.
Baby is born with 100 billion neurons. But those quadrillion connections, they're not there yet. Those connections form at a very rapid speed during the first 5 years of life, at 700 to 1,000 new synapses per second. Those connections are created through every interaction a child has and are important because they form the architecture of the brain. So every time you talk to and engage with a child, you are literally growing a brain, connecting the different parts of the brain which allows for new ideas, insights, and creative thinking. So each moment of eye contact, each new word exchanged, each time you make a child laugh, you are strengthening these connections. And since there are so many different ways to do this, we ask people around the world, send us videos of your favorite ways to engage with the children in your life. During these early years, a child's brain makes as many connections as possible. And then it begins pruning the ones that aren't used and strengthening the ones that are. A dynamic process that continues throughout life. But since a child's brain is activated by everything it encounters, it can also be overwhelmed, which causes stress. When the brain experiences stress, the body's alarm system is activated. If the stress is relieved quickly, the system easily returns to normal. And while learning to deal with stress is an important part of development, severe situations such as ongoing abuse or neglect, where there is no caring adult to relieve the stress, leaves the body's alarm system activated, which can have serious lifelong consequences for the child. This is known as toxic stress. Toxic stress can lead to a body system set permanently on high alert. It causes the synapses we use for learning and self-control to be pruned, while connections for fear and rash behavior get stronger. While the brain can change throughout the rest of life, these early years are fundamental in building a strong foundation for curiosity, creativity, and adaptability.
Okay, so as caregivers, we are responsible for really building those relationships, and these can have a powerful role in what the video mentioned in preventing and reversing any damaging effects of toxic stress. The experience a child has in those first 5 years are really monumental to their development and growth as a learner. So we're going to talk a little bit about the key social emotional skills really needed for that school age. So thinking about those first 5 years of life, setting the child up to then, be ready for school. And these are from several national reports, some of the identified key social emotional development skills that are needed for that kind of quote unquote school readiness or success. So and they help the children be successful as they transition into kindergarten, some of which we've already kind of talked about. So let's take a closer look at some key characteristics associated with autism. So when you have a child with autism, the brain is developing differently. They're neurodivergent, and just like everyone else, they have incredible skills and knowledge and can do so much. They may think and do differently than other people and may need additional supports. Obviously, every child is their own individual. So the key things with autism is, there's the challenges in communication and social interactions. Some children might find it difficult to engage in those typical conversations or really understand those social cues. And this can make forming relationships a little bit harder for them. We may see the presence of what we call repetitive behaviors or a strong preference for routine. Changes in daily routine can be hard sometimes for kids with autism. It can lead to distress, anxiety, and the repetitive behaviors may do the same. Those are things like sometimes we see kids hand flapping or repeating certain phrases. Again, it looks different from child to child. In addition to these core characteristics, we see some kids who are really focused on special interests. And to me, these are the kids, this is why I love working with individuals with autism, because they know so much about certain topics. So, they have incredible knowledge about particular topics and are able to share that information. And to me, that's a strength that we just sometimes have to build on. Some kids have some sensory sensitivities. This can be anything from sounds, lights, textures, foods, anything that's involving the sensory system. And then finally, self-regulation. That can be hard, especially if they're having challenges with talking and socially engaging with other people. Their way to communicate may be through a behavior, and that self-regulation can be hard. So it's really, understanding these characteristics really help us in figuring out where to support the individuals and to really foster them in the environments they're in so that they can thrive. There are also a lot of these characteristics are those building blocks for social and emotional development. So by understanding these traits, we can really gear the work that we're doing around fostering their skills and getting them ready for a school environment around social and emotional development. So how do we get there? So we've talked about the critical early developmental period from birth to 5. Then children are going to be beginning schools. And so we have a unique opportunities to really build those relationships and develop those skills in this period. So for example, when a very young child experiences positive relationships and learns to express emotions, they're better able to develop friendships with peers. For children with autism, this might involve using certain strategies like social stories or role playing with them. And again, having those consistent routines to really help them understand and navigate social interactions. I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into some of more specific strategies with this as we continue on. Similarly, when an infant feels secure in their surroundings, and experiences kind of that excitement of discovery. You think about a young child discovering something for the first time, they become confident in their learning. And so we want that same confidence for all of our kids. And so with kids with autism, it's, creating a predictable, sensory-friendly environment, using those interests that they have as a springboard for learning. Which can really foster their sense of security and excitement around the things that they're doing. And it can really make them feel a lot more comfortable exploring new concepts and really encouraging them, to get through hard things that might be a little bit more challenging. So I love this quote, if we're not intentionally teaching social skills and emotional competencies, we will be responding to challenging behavior instead of giving children the tools they need to behave differently. So we want to jump to supporting children at the most intensive level of need without really focusing again on that foundation of the necessary skills socially and emotionally that we can teach. So our responses to challenging behavior will be most effective when we really focus on that prevention of challenging behavior and really that promotion of the social and emotional competencies that our kids need. This is important for all kids, including kids with autism. So this is across the board, for all children. For today, I'm going to kind of lay out a framework that's going to hopefully help you guys in thinking about how to teach those skills. This is a great way to think about, okay, I would like my child or the child I'm working with to learn a specific skill, and these basic steps will help me get there. And when we're thinking about kids with autism, this framework provides a structure in doing that, because there is a little bit more work perhaps that might have to go into teaching some of the skills and some other tools that we might have to use in teaching. So those stages are show and tell, which is really that early acquisition stage when children need a skill explained and demonstrated for them. Practice makes perfect, which refers to that need to have those meaningful opportunities to practice and really build that fluency. And then that you got it phase is that stage of learning when a child really knows the skill well enough to use it over time and then in new situations, so across environments. So before anything can happen, the adult, whether it be a caregiver, an educator, family member, you have to identify the skills. So we're going to talk about 4 social emotional skills. Again, thinking about kids starting around age 2 to that pre-school transition, so going into kindergarten. So friendship skills, it's developing those social relationships, being able to have back and forth exchanges or reciprocity. You know, we think about sharing of toys and materials, organizing play, sequences and episodes, sharing affection with other friends and other people. Emotional literacy is really that ability to identify, understand, and respond to emotions, not only in individual self, but also in others in a healthy manner. Self-regulation is that ability to regulate emotions and behavior across different settings and activities. And then finally, problem solving, which is identifying a problem in a social situation, solving that problem, thinking about like the consequences, and then recognizing when one solution doesn't work, they can try another, you know, another problem, another way of getting about it. So we know that all kids want to interact. Like, we are social beings. That, I mean, everyone wants to interact with others, but sometimes some don't have the skills to engage appropriately, or they may be overwhelmed by the process. So we're going to take a look and dive deep into these certain skill areas and think about certain strategies that we can use for each of these. So the first one is teaching friendship skills. So these are the characteristics that improve the likelihood of developing healthy relationships. Anything from just initiating those interactions, saying hi, sharing materials with other kids in play situations, being able to communicate and give suggestions, taking turns, as I mentioned, giving compliments, demonstrating that empathy. These are kind of the friendship skills that we would like, kids to build on. And these skills really promote, not only positive and strong peer relationships, but peer acceptance, language development. It's a great opportunity to use language, learning to cooperate, being included in activities, and really resilience around being around other kids and being able to play. So how do we break this down in that show and tell? So we're going to kind of zero in on that acquisition stage, and how to teach friendship skills. It's nice I'm a checklist person, so seeing this is helpful. It provides some structure. Obviously, there's an ebb and a flow, and life doesn't always happen in a structure. So especially with kids, but this probably gives us a good idea of like areas that we can start to demonstrate a skill. So describing it, demonstrating it, for our kids with autism, perhaps using visuals, depending on their language and communication skills. I think it's helpful to demonstrate a skill a right way, and then to also just demonstrate it a wrong way. So they're learning both sides of that, and then practicing, with family members and then with other kids, and providing that positive feedback. So again, for kids with autism, those modifications may have to be added. So for example, in the skills described, like I said, using clear, simple language, pairing that with visual supports like picture cards, icons, videos. For kids who have really limited language, they may be using an augmentative or alternative communication device, so AAC, and thinking about how to use that in the social situations is important. So I'm going to start with an example that we can kind of take through friendship skills and our little framework. So teaching how to turn take. We may start with showing a picture sequence that illustrates the steps of taking turns. So it can be very simple stuff of laying out how to do that. When it comes to practicing, it's important to provide that guided practice. So using lots of praise and encouragement. Sometimes you could use hand over hand if a child needs that assistance. Again, using those visual cues or even just prompting. So an example for the turn-taking practice, an adult might say, now it's my turn, and you would gently guide the child's hand to pass a toy. And again, it's practicing that over and over in different situations for them to practice that back and forth exchange. So as we know, daily routines are really that optimal time to teach and practice skills, especially in the home environment, and in perhaps a daycare environment as well. So most of these routines can provide children that opportunity to have that back and forth social interaction. One may be giving or asking for an item, while the other is taking or giving an item. So in the home environment, other family members, including the adults or even siblings, are great to practice with, and getting creative with what that might be. I think about mealtime. That's a great time for giving or asking for food, having the food on the table or wherever you might be sitting and practicing, exchanging, food and getting it onto your plate. Bath time's a great time for practicing taking turns, dumping water cups. You could have 5, 6 cups out and you each take a turn filling it up and dumping it out. So it's just simple stuff and using the materials that are already in the environment that the child's in. Here's some other ideas to increase exchanges. Peer buddies is a great way. So again, thinking about the child's environment, if they're home and perhaps not in a childcare or school setting yet, are there neighbors in the neighborhood that could come over and, have simple exchanges with the child, playing a matching game or rolling a ball back and forth. So thinking about who can provide that peer support for the child. Dramatic play, this is the fun one where you're teaching a sequence. So an example would be like going to the grocery store. So you could use a simple schedule with visuals, pick an item out, pay for the item, put the item in the bag, laying things out in a structural way that provides the child opportunities to practice doing that, and then building on it by incorporating other kids, and then building on that play sequence. Social stories are a great way to also do dramatic play, by laying out certain stories that the kids might be engaging with. Perhaps it's playing with baby dolls and feeding the baby dolls. So having a story about how to do that, what materials you're using, and then how it can be expanded. And then collaborative play is things like games, puzzles, breaking tasks into steps, facilitating those interactions like blocks. Blocks are a great way for collaborative play between other kids, taking turns stacking and building something together. So I like to think of these as start simple and small, and then think about the ways that it can be expanded. So for the maintain and generalize, we want to think about how it's used over time with independence. So that's like the goal of maintenance. And then the goal of generalizing is how is it then used across different people, materials, and settings. So it's important to really embed these opportunities throughout a child's entire day. I always encourage parents, and providers working with kids, especially kids with autism, to think about the settings that the child might be in and how to practice these skills, and really setting oneself up for success. So, for some families, it may be a lot to go out into public places. The recommendation would be go check it out first. Take pictures or see if there's pictures online so the child can see where they're going. Go with someone that the child's familiar with, like if there's a neighbor friend, so that it's comfortable and can be a good experience to not only experience the new place, but also to practice those skills. So I always love resources, and as I mentioned, NCPMI has a great resource library. There for friendship skills, they have these backpack connections, which are great strategies to try at home. They also have their positive solutions for families. There's a routine guidebook, which is amazing because it has different home routines. The example here is play. And it just talks you through teaching certain skills in those routines, including friendship skills. So these are great resources to have on hand. You can print out, like they're 1 to 2 pages. You could print them out for a family if you needed to, and have available. Okay. So teaching emotional literacy, I'm going to use that framework, but I'm going to kind of go through this a little bit more quickly now that we kind of have a general idea of how that's used. So emotional literacy, as I mentioned, is really that ability to identify, understand, and respond to emotions. For kids with autism, it's so important for improving social interactions, really enhancing communication skills, reducing any anxiety they may have, improving their empathy, and really preparing them for adulthood. So again, we're talking about that foundation for the future. Just real quick, children with strong emotional literacy skills. Here's kind of a list of what we found in the research. They're healthier, they're less impulsive, they engage in less destructive behavior. So more reason to work on these skills at a younger age. Key things that we want to teach when we're teaching about feelings, it's specific words. So happy, sad, mad, angry, the basics. And we'll talk a little bit more about expanding that, but it is very specific words. Emphasizing that feelings do change, that kids can have more than one feeling about something. You can feel differently than someone else about the same thing, and that all feelings are really, really valid. I think sometimes we get into situations as adults where we may, we're quick to get out the door, for example, and we have a child that's breaking down with us, and, it's time to go. And, we could be, fast to say, okay, we got to stop crying. We got to get going. When really we just need to pause and be with that child through those emotions. Because in actuality, it's not going to help that child to stop cry. And it may make them more upset hearing those words. It's also a missed opportunity for that connection and practicing like a coping skill. And it also might send the message that being sad is not okay or bad, which I know as an adult, my feelings got pushed to the side a lot. So I've been learning in the last 20 years since leaving the home that my feelings are okay. They are valid, and learning how to do that. So just things to keep in mind in ourselves as adults and how we were parented, and how we may be evolving as parents ourselves and working with kids. So as I said, it's really important to teach more than the basics, happy, sad, or mad. There are so many great lists of emotion words out there to use with children and how to kind of expand on those. So starting with the basics is always important, and then going from there and expanding the kids' emotional language. With emotional literacy, books are the go-to. Books are a great way to introduce new feelings, new situations, and talk through it with your kids. I am going to put a plug out there. Kansas has the Imagination Library, and any child under the age of 5 can sign up for free books. And as a parent myself to young children, we've received these books for both my daughters, and there are some great books encouraging social emotional development. So it's free. I highly encourage that as a resource to get some good books and to build a child's library. Playing games. So as kids' language develops, it's, talking through emotions, how it looks, how it feels, asking those questions about certain situations that the child might be in, and that how they may feel if it were them. So these are just simple ways, like on a car ride, of having these conversations with kids as they develop their language and are able to converse in this manner. So this might be for more older kids, 4 to 5-year-olds, just breaking things down for them. As I mentioned, we as adults are really important in this, in emotional literacy. Here's some basic do's and don'ts of how to model labeling of emotions. Sometimes I think we're teaching ourselves this stuff for the first time in some situations. So these are just good reminders, and there's some examples here. So again, it's practicing a lot, and then thinking about how to maintain and generalize the skills for these children. And with emotions, these are skills that are going to continue into the school years, well into the school years, and well into adulthood. So they are, I would say, emotional literacy. It's simple at this age. It doesn't have to be complex, but giving kids those opportunities to practice is really going to set them up for success as they get into school. So what we want to see is that children are labeling their own emotions. They're labeling them in other kids as well, or the adults in their family. And that they're recognizing emotions can change over time. So what might seem like sadness now may turn into anger later. And really getting children comfortable to talk about their feelings, and the why behind that. Again, here's some at-home resources. That Backpack Connection series has some great stuff on emotional literacy. There's some amazing resources on feeling faces, feeling words. There's a great book list on this website if you're interested in very specific social emotional development books, and then also some family articles. So our time is getting cut a little bit short, so I want to be sure that we have time to get to our case example. So I'm going to just kind of briefly touch on emotional regulation and then problem solving, and thinking about some strategies for kids with autism. So with emotional regulation, we really want our children to become, excited and have, friends, and be able to be with them, and be able to regulate their own emotions. The skills that we think about this in teaching, recognizing emotions in themselves, learning some calm down strategies, and using appropriate ways to express emotions. So let's look at a few tools for calm down strategies. A relaxation thermometer is a great tool. This provides a visual for how kids may be feeling. And as you can see in the picture here, you've got blue at the bottom, which is relaxed, and you've got matte at the top, which is red. And so having the kids to kind of determine where they are in that thermometer. I think a great skill to teach kids at a really young age is how to take a breath. It's so easy for us as adults to say, take a deep breath, but sometimes kids don't know how to do that. They don't know what it feels like. Using pinwheels is a great way to learn. You're Going in and then taking that deep breath and then going out to blow the pinwheel. Also smelling a flower, the same concept. You know, you're breathing in and then breathing out, using that belly and feeling it get big and small. So those are fun ways to kind of teach breathing techniques. Some other ideas, creating like a calm space, whether it's in the home or in the classroom. So if a child is, you know, perhaps having a moment, they can go there and be safe and use that space to calm down. And there's no distractions, it's away from everyone else. That can easily be done at home and also in a childcare or educational environment. Games like red light, green light, kind of that stop go, are great ways to learn self-regulation and self-control skills. Calm down jars, which there's pictures of those there. As the kids are getting older, I think it's fun to start to teach the concept of mindfulness and yoga, moving the body, and again, you know, practicing on those breathing. So great calming skills for the kids to have. Again, just like in our framework, we practice and we use it across settings. Especially for our kids with autism, we do this quite a bit. So practice a lot and use it across settings. We're going to skip over that video. Again, there's some great tools for self-regulation, calm down ideas, some good articles, and then that Backpack Connection series has some really good information. Our final skill is problem solving. This is a fun one to kind of break down with kids, and to see this grow over time. I know from, you know, watching my oldest go from 2 to kindergarten and see how her problem solving skills increased. Because with new situations, you know, kids are constantly learning. So knowing how to problem solve really helps with, you know, decreasing those social problems, increasing their independence, and children begin to work together. So that collaborative play, much like we talked about earlier in the friendship skills. So these skills teach how to identify that a problem has occurred, thinking of solutions, understanding that situations have consequences, and when one thing doesn't work, they can try another solution. So knowing how to kind of pivot a little bit if they need to. So this is broken down into teaching and modeling the problem-solving steps. We want to teach a variety of solutions to certain problems. We can use visuals, we can model these skills, you know, using visual supports and breaking down those steps, key for kids with autism. So one example might be a child lost a toy. So you might say, first, I'll think of where I last saw it. So it's kind of getting the brain to work, like, where did I see it last? And then you're going to go check those places one by one. Social stories are also helpful for problem solving, you know, a certain situation, just breaking it down for the child that's relevant for them. Again, kids need lots of opportunities. So these are some great visual examples, you know, kids taking toys from other kids, wanting to play on the swings when there's not a swing available, or a child coloring on, you know, another child's piece of paper, knocking down some blocks. These are all everyday social situations that happen. And so being able to problem solve through these is really important. And really, over time, it takes a lot of practice. So our kids really learn with practice and with time and a lot of consistency. So as I mentioned, modeling and labeling problem-solving skills is really important across a child's day. You know, some ways to really get creative with this, place materials or toys out so children are required to share. So think about what's available to children and limiting it a little bit so that it does kind of force that back and forth and sharing. I laughed at this one amongst colleagues, but like forgetting certain things. So forget, like, for example, forget to bring a book or material you might need. And kids will have to think through, well, how do we do this? You know, we don't have this right now. So we kind of, you know, get creative in this. An art project is another great opportunity, only putting out a couple different materials and having the kids figure out, well, wait a minute, if we want to do this, we need this material. How do we get that? So thinking through that sequence of how do we solve this problem in completing, you know, the project that they have at hand. Snack time is a great time. Perhaps you have a food item like an orange. You have one orange, but there's 3 of you at the table. So how do you problem solve that to see how everybody gets, you know, pieces of the orange? So, and then stories, of course, are great opportunities to practice problem solving. Books have plenty of those situations laid out, and you can talk through that with them. So in the moment, you really want to be prepared, you know, plan ahead, anticipate, be close, be nearby. So, you know, if more than one child's together, be near them so you can be an aid if you have to step in and support them. Really encouraging them through solving these skills and then promoting those in the moment problem solving opportunities. For that maintenance and generalization for problem solving, you know, it's really, we start to see that kids are recognizing when there's a conflict that needs to be solved. And we start to see them sharing solutions and figuring it out with them. So it's really neat. I think these skills are fun to see as kids get older because they really evolve over time. Again, there's some great resources around problem solving. You know, there's some visual sequences, that backpack connection, and then there's some social stories as well. So as we wrap up today, I do have a little girl that I'd like to share with you. Her name is Amber. We're gonna kind of talk through case study and then open discussion to answering some questions of some things we might do based on what we've learned today. So Amber's 4. She absolutely loves tigers and trains, which are really fun interests to have. She does have a diagnosis of autism and attends an all-day inclusive preschool program. She absolutely loves school. She has several friends, but she's been having a hard time regulating her body and feelings when she's been upset. Changes in routine can be hard, and it can cause her to kind of run back and forth in the classroom, have difficulty following directions and repeating phrases from movies or television. So her teachers aren't sure how to help her learn to calm down. They're wondering how to use her interest in tigers and trains to teach these skills. So thinking about some of the things we went over today, I'm going to open it up to you guys. Let's start with just what social emotional skills are challenging to Amber. So just identifying kind of the skill areas that we'd be working on if we were working with Amber.
Sarah,
Uh-huh.
could you put the case study screen slide back up as well, or we could copy it and
Yeah.
drop it in the chat?
No, yeah, I can keep that up and I can just, you guys don't need to see the questions. So does that work for you, Linda?
Yeah, but that doesn't mean it works for everybody else.
This maybe doesn't answer your specific question, Sarah, but I'm thinking of the lens of the teachers that are at the early learning program. I think of knowing that this young child has a hard time with routine or unexpected events, and we know the importance in early childhood that routines are really critical and important. So I think of something in the sense of what the educators maybe could reflect on their own teaching strategies and classroom routine to make sure that it is consistent, because it will benefit all children. And I guess I was just thinking of, I guess I'm kind of stepping ahead, but thinking of just what is already embedded in the environment that could help her to calm down, whether it's a beanbag area with sensory toys, books, pictures of children with different emotions, a picture of her family. Those kind of things just kind of come to mind right away.
No, those are great ideas. Yes. And I think with this, also thinking about the home environment too, and at home, what do the routines look like? How consistent are we as adults? Because if you think about, if you've got a home with multiple children and people are in and out, with her, having to switch up that routine and having something unexpected come up can be challenging. So, how to prepare for that in the home environment. And to your point, having a place for her to kind of calm down if she needs to, having materials available to her, like perhaps it's a teddy bear or a lovey or something that she can hold on and grab. So, yeah.
Yep, really leveraging what her likes are. If she likes tigers and trains, maybe she can bring something from home, and that's kind of her go-to when she does get upset. If that gives her comfort.
Yep, that's a great idea. Well, with that,
So-
oh, go ahead, Linda.
Yeah, sorry, we only have 4 minutes left, but my brain immediately goes to intervention.
Yeah.
We need strategies other than those to help her calm down when she's elevated. One of the things that I know when we're identifying these targets to teach, based on some of the stuff that you had in your presentation, one of the first things that I would try to teach her for emotional regulation would be how to take a deep breath. And know that we have to teach her in a non-elevated situation how to be able to take a deep breath before we can expect her to use that in practice.
Correct. Yeah.
So that's one of the things that I would teach her, so that she's got her own self-calming strategies that she can use instead of being dependent on us to guide her to self-calming strategies. And then, of course, the other thing that I would focus on trying to teach her is how to tolerate interruptions in routines, because life is unpredictable.
Correct.
And if our goal is to expand her future, instead of relegating her to a restrictive environment where only her routines are present, then we need to provide her with the skills she needs to be able to tolerate changes in routine using self-calming strategies, perhaps.
Yeah.
But it's important, I think, to note, and then I'll quit talking because I've already been talking. Sorry, don't want to monopolize your presentation here. But I think it's really important to note that those things have to be taught.
Yes.
And that they need to be taught outside of the environment within which we expect that behavior to occur. Because a lot of times we want to try to get them to do it in the moment.
Sure.
But we can't, especially little itty bitties, we can't expect them to do it in the moment if we haven't taught them how to do it.
Exactly. Yeah. Would anyone else like to contribute to the conversation with any ideas? Or any questions?
Yeah, feel free to come off of mute, or you can put a question or a comment in the chat.
We've got a very silent group today.
It's okay. It's a Friday afternoon, so.